So hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of the Corp Fit podcast. I'm your host Esther, a corporate coach at Corp Fit, where we help individuals get fit for a corporate career. Today, we are joined by our panelists and we're going to be discussing how to break into the finance industry and get a career there. But before we get into that, firstly, I want to say a huge congratulations to a few of our members in the Corp Fit community who have secured roles recently, Johnson, George and Milo, so a big well done. We also have various roles in investment banking for you guys, so do get in touch. As I mentioned, today we'll be talking about securing a role in the finance and technology industries, and we are joined by an exceptional panel here. We have some of our corporate coaches, Solomon, Victor and Safia here joined with us today, and we also have a very special guest, Reggie Nelson here, and we're going to pick his brains a little bit. So firstly, could I ask you what you are doing currently work-wise, Reggie, and how you got into that? What route did you take?
Yeah, sure. So currently I work at Blackstone, which is a private equity company and also does a lot of real estate for the most part. Work in private wealth solutions. So my day-to-day role is to manage relationships for private banks that want to invest in our real estate funds or private equity funds or private credit funds. And how I got into this role in particular, so I was headhunted for this role, but how I got into the industry, I started my career on a graduate program at Legal & General, Investment Management, rotating across distributions and investments. And I went to university, so went through that route, did a handful of internships there, and then landed my graduate program.
Okay, brilliant. And if I could ask the same question to our corporate coaches at Corp Fit. So starting with you, Safia.
So I'm Safia. I'm a software developer degree apprentice at a bulge bracket investment bank. How I got here was through sixth form. I was quite adamant that I wanted to do a degree apprenticeship. So I applied and did a lot of research and then landed my position now.
Okay, congratulations. And what about you, Victor?
Similar to Safia, I'm a technology degree apprentice at a bulge bracket firm. I'm currently in the fixed income division, working in an SRE role, which is software reliability engineering.
Okay, and Solomon, last but
Hi
not
everyone,
least.
my name is Solomon, also coined as the bodybuilding banker. I'm currently at a buyout fund. I've previously done a couple of years in M&A and a bit different, enjoying the role, but yeah, glad to be here.
I hope it wasn't too hot getting here. Obviously, outside is really hot. So I do have a few questions for all of you, starting off with Reggie. So thank you for coming and letting us pick your brains today. Okay, so you have quite a crazy journey, a crazy story that I feel like a lot of people have seen on the news and elsewhere. So the first question I have for you is obviously what gave you the idea? And I think I know you know what I'm talking about, so you can explain.
Yeah, sure. So the idea stemmed from two places really. Stemmed from a TV show that my sister and I was watching by the late John Rivers, How'd You Get So Rich? And I think it was very much faith-led as well. And the reason why I did what I did was because I was at a crossroad and not really knowing what I wanted to do with my career long term. So I was playing football at the time, playing at a relatively high level. Was on a 2-year contract, but halfway through it, decided that I didn't want to play football anymore. And just thinking long term, I suffered the death of my father at that time as well. So I wanted to do something that was going to provide for myself and for my family. So then I wanted to find out how the wealthy amassed wealth. And I went to Kensington and Chelsea and started asking people what skills they had so that I could extrapolate that and use it for myself.
Like literally door to door?
Yeah, no. So at first it was just asking people on the streets, right? And asking like what skills they had. That wasn't like, no one was stopping to talk to me.
Yeah.
So that's when I decided to like up it up a notch and go and knock on people's doors. Because at this point I just wanted a response. And knocked on a particular door, the door opened, and I think we're probably going to go into it a bit more, but that's how the idea came about.
Okay, brilliant. So in 2022, obviously it's a bit of a different time. Do you think a similar idea could work for someone that is in the position you were in? And if not, what advice would you give for someone in this day and age?
Would it work? Honestly, the answer is I don't know. My advice would be to just think innovatively. I think at that point I wanted to find something that not many people would think of doing, just so I could stand out and it could probe more questions from the people I was talking to, because I didn't have a network. I didn't have family in professional quote unquote careers, so I couldn't leverage the people around me. I couldn't tap into people to gain advice. So I was starting from the ground up, and I needed to build that. So I think anyone in my position at the time, I think that's where you start, and you do how that looks like to you. So if you have a network around you, then tap into that. If you have a particular person that could help you, then again, tap into that, a mentor, sponsors, whatever it might be. I think that's what I was trying to build out initially. And if you don't have that, then by all means, you have to think innovatively to get there. But yeah, I think it will work, but you have to almost tailor it to yourself and think innovatively outside the box so that you can gain as much interest as possible.
Okay, yeah, I hear that. So kind of leaning on the resources you have around you, but above that, thinking outside the box to kind of create something that's, for you and tailored to you and works for you. So you did mention that you ended up knocking on a particular door. So do you want to go into whose door that was and how things changed for you at that moment?
Yeah, sure. So I was in the area for about 3 hours, knocking on people's doors, asking people the question about how they, what skills they had to amass wealth. And I knocked on this particular door, and a lady opens the door. Well, at first she's speaking to me through her intercom, so she can see me, but I can't see her. And she's asking me respectfully, why am I here? And I told her why I'm here, and then she comes to open the door and then invites me into her house. We start talking for about 5 minutes, and then her husband walks in. So her husband was the head of alpha strategies at BlackRock, which is the largest asset management company in the world. And he was equivalent to like a CIO equivalent, right? He was on a senior exec team globally, and he was traveling. He was working across London and New York. And we started talking for about an hour, and he said, have I ever considered a career in finance? And I was honest, I said no, because at that point I wasn't chasing anything to do with professional careers. I didn't really know what I wanted to do at that point. I just focused on football, and school was never my thing anyway. So I didn't really focus in school and didn't want to go to university or anything like that. But he posed a question to me around university, around finance and asset management. So then I went into BlackRock a week later for an insight day. Insight day led to a work experience for a week. And that's when I had a meeting with him, my mum, and another guy called Abraxas. And they encouraged me to go to university, which I didn't want to do, right? But he said if I wanted to break into the sector, it's really competitive. You're going to be competing against some of the smartest candidates in the country. There's a finite number of positions. You have to build yourself up and make yourself as competitive as possible. So that's when I went to university, and yeah, that's when the journey into finance actually began. But before that, I didn't want to go into finance. I didn't even know about finance. My first day at BlackRock, I didn't even know how to dress the corporate attire. Do you know what I mean? The Nike side pouch, and my shirt was really big. My tie was up to here. Nothing was sort of. I didn't fit the norms of I didn't have the corporate fit. Yeah, pun intended. But yeah, no, that's when the journey started. So university is when I started to pick it up, and then it fell into place from there.
Okay, so it's crazy to think how advice from one person can change your whole trajectory of your career and what you're going to do, because you didn't plan to go to university, and you may not have
at all
gone if you hadn't knocked on that one door.
University was steep as well. I failed my first exam. I didn't know anything about economics. I studied economics, right? I didn't know economics had maths in it. I kid you not, I never studied maths past GCSE, and I did that early, a year early. So I hadn't touched maths since year 10. Didn't know anything around sort of finance and careers or spring internships or anything like that. So I was starting from a blank canvas, right? My first day in a university was my first time ever stepping in a university. I didn't go to open days or anything like that.
Or nothing, you had no experience.
Nothing at all. It was all very much last minute. So my first exam, I scored 25%, which is a fail.
Yeah, a strong one.
Yeah, tough fail. Yeah, tough fail.
Yeah.
And I was very close to leaving university, within the first sort of semester, because I thought it's the first exam, I failed it, it's not going to work, I'm going to sort of find something else to do.
Yeah.
But back to your point of one person being the sounding board and the catalyst for all of this, he was the person that encouraged me, gave me sound advice. Next exam I scored 82% and then 84%. And then I was I'm quite smart.
I'm cut out
yeah,
for this.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I can do this. And from there, the spring internships fell into place. I did one internship, another one led on, and throughout university, I think I did 5 internships at various asset managers and hedge funds in the city. and then graduated and started my career in finance.
That's crazy. So you went from getting 25% in an exam to eventually writing a book. Yeah. So do you want to tell us a bit about that book and what it's like to be published, etc.?
Yeah. So my book's called Opening Doors.
Okay.
And it was published 12th of May this year, 2022. I started writing in 2018. So talk about 4 years from very beginning to very end. The whole writing process itself took about 6 months. But from beginning of like sourcing an agent, getting all the deals in place, getting a book deal, negotiations, contracts, all that stuff, to the book actually coming out was about 4 years. And the reason why I wanted to write a book was 2018 is when my story sort of broke and like the main media outlets found out about my story and stuff. And I think it did like 8 out of 10 of the largest newspapers by circulation in the country, and it traveled to North America and other places on the continent. And I did like BBC, ITV, and all these like major platforms and stuff, but I hadn't told a story from my own lens. And I've given these platforms the opportunity to tell my story, but I wanted to tell it from myself from very beginning to very end. Yeah. So I wanted to write a book to just document that. And 4 years on, the book sort of came out, and even though the writing process itself was super nostalgic, it was quite emotional, particularly the beginning half, because the beginning half is what I really wanted to echo on and hone in on. People knew about the latter end, about working in finance, working with the Prime Minister, doing all of these different things that I did, but no one knew about the beginning. And I felt like the beginning shaped what was happening right now. So the writing process was amazing. And yeah, I just want to big up my agents for that, because they really had confidence in me, because again, I've struggled quite a bit, not so much now, but in times past, with like the imposter syndrome and feeling like not belonging and all that stuff. But I'm fortunate I've had good people in my corner to back me and help me sort of overcome those barriers and those hurdles. So in finance, it was Quinton, it was Braxis, it was the people I've met along the way. In this new world of writing, my agents, like I wanted a ghostwriter to write the book. But my agent said, write 1 or 2 chapters and we'll see. Yeah. So I wrote like 1 or 2 chapters, and she just said, there's no way you're getting a ghostwriter. You're writing this yourself. Yeah. And that was the confidence I needed. So I went away, hid myself away for like 6 months, 50,000 words later, gave it to her and said, look, this is the first draft. And she was like, can't believe you ever wanted a ghostwriter. This is insane. So from there, we sourced the book deal, had 3 publishers interested, signed with 1, and then released it on May the 12th.
Wow, congratulations,
Thank
first
you.
of all.
Thank you.
And also you mentioned BBC. So I know you have a podcast over there.
Yeah.
Do you want to tell us what that's called and about it, and also give us like some key takeaways that people may get if they listen to your podcast? Yeah,
sure. Podcast is called Your Work, Your Money. So we did 2 seasons of that during the lockdown period. So lockdown happened, and I had done a few things with BBC before. Like I did the One Extra tour with them, and I did a lot of stuff on 5 Live and other sort of live radio stuff for BBC. Yeah. And I got approached by one of the business correspondents and said, oh, they're thinking of starting this podcast, sort of young-ish audience. Lockdown has happened, a lot of uncertainty in regard to money, the economy, finance. Do you want to be a part of it? I said, okay, cool. I think I said I'm not a podcaster, but if you want me to do it, then by all means, I mean, I'll give it a try.
Yeah.
So we got all the sort of formalities out of the way, and we did a pilot that went well. Did 1 season, got commissioned for another season. We won silver at the British Podcast Awards, which was an incredible achievement. Mm-hmm. And we did 2 seasons because the podcast was namely for the lockdown period and all the uncertainty around there. So as things started to ease off, there was like less uncertainty, right? So the podcast is on BBC now. You can listen to it 2 seasons. And that was a good experience because, again, like I said, I never sort of podcasted before, if that's even a word, right? But no, that was a blessing in itself. And major props to BBC for that.
Yeah. And what would be like 1 key takeaway, 2 key takeaways? Or maybe things that you really remember saying that really impacted a lot of people from that podcast?
We got a lot of questions around investing. So lockdown exposed, I think, 2 things, right? Exposed that number one, you can't tie your income to one place.
Yeah.
Because if
for
that
sure.
goes, then you're kind of in the hole. And number two, I feel like people had ample amount of money that they needed to do something with. Because if you was working from home, you're saving on travel, probably saving on food. You weren't allowed to go anywhere. So people were accumulating a lot of cash, not knowing where to put that cash. And a lot of the questions we received was just around like, where do I put my money? And what does that look like? And, you know, do I invest in this and do I invest in that? Crypto had a real surgence in that period as well. So a lot of the questions were around crypto and, you know, should I invest in crypto, you know, to the moon? What coins do I buy? And a lot of the advice, well, technically wasn't advice, but a lot of the things that I remember talking about was like, if you are going to invest, then you need to ask yourself some questions before you even touch any of the platforms, which is like, what is your time horizon? Are you short term? Are you long term? What is your risk appetite like? And what are you actually saving for? Because I think those three questions tailor what you're going to invest in. For instance, if you're thinking long term, your risk appetite is quite high and you haven't got a real end goal, you're just saving because you know saving's good, then you can afford to probably take more risk, right? So you might want to invest in equities, for example, right? But if you're, say, more short term and you don't have a high risk appetite and you're saving to buy a car or you're saving for a wedding, you can't afford to ride the volatility wave, right? So you're probably going to invest in something like a fixed income asset, right? Maybe like a government bond, or you're going to invest in things that have less volatility. And those are the things we try to get people to think about, because people just wanted to make money, which is fair, but you can make money, but you can also lose money. And I don't think people were thinking about the latter end of that.
Yeah, it goes two ways.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay, thank you so much for letting us pick your brains today. Like, that was amazing. You gave us a lot of insight and a lot of valuable tips from your journey and like where you are now and how you started out.
Yeah.
So just a
No,
thank you so much.
I
I'm sure
appreciate it.
people watching are clapping as well. So next I have a few questions for you, Solomon. Okay, so Solomon, you secured your role before leaving university, a graduate role, if I'm correct. So what advice would you give to students that are still at university trying to secure a role before they leave, just like you did?
Cool. This is an interesting question because I think advice tailors to your situation. But similar to Reggie, the way I try to think of it is I set a big goal and I reverse engineer. So if I think of how I even got into finance, very, very similar. You know, I said, okay, what do these people with briefcases walk in the city do? I asked the question, I found out, and then I did the steps in between. So taking it back, I managed to go to a good university and there was a network there. The easiest thing for me was to ask the question. So I asked, how do you do it? Then I found out about spring insight weeks, summer internships. But then that comes with its own challenge with cover letters, CVs, interviews. So essentially what I'm trying to say is, you know, think of the bigger question and find out the individual steps and execute as well as you can. And there's something that I live by now, which is every kind of question you have or problem you have, it might sound crude, but it's a problem of ignorance because someone's been through that journey before. So I wasn't the first person to ever pursue investment banking. People have done it before. So I just use my network. You know, fortunately, I was in a football team. I was able to ask those guys, whether it was the people that went out, anyone I could seek that could make my journey a lot more smoother, I asked. So yeah, in a long story short, you know, asked the right questions, did the kind of spring internships and did the summer. Didn't get my first summer, but obviously I leveraged off the benefit of the experience and managed to secure a full-time offer.
Okay, there seems to be a bit of a correlation with the football and the finance here. But yeah, no, that's amazing. And just to touch on that, you said you didn't get your first one that you applied for. Some people would feel demotivated by that, or a bit like, what would you say is the best approach to dealing with that and moving on and using it to help you?
Sure, you got to just think of the way the world works, you know. Things are not handed to you. You have to kind of go and execute. So I think for me, I was always someone with probably great perseverance. So I wasn't willing to say no. I didn't think like, you know, I feel like you're deserving of whatever you can put your mind to. And I think for me, it was like, okay, I didn't get my first internship or I didn't get my first offer. What can I do next? You know, there are people that have done it in their second, third. You know, I heard some stories, you know, in investment banking. I think I went to a networking event and someone said he was in the military and then he went back into investment banking. So as Reggie would know, people go through all shapes and walks of life. They take different turns and pivots, but as long as like you execute on the final goal, and that was kind of my mentality and thinking.
And I feel like you mentioned that you have a lot of perseverance. So maybe this kind of feeds into the next question. I know here at Corp Fit, you're both a corporate coach and a fitness coach. So talk a bit about your career, also staying in shape and having like a healthy work-life balance.
Sure. That was tough in investment banking, and Demi would know, especially at our time. We were at the same investment bank. For me, it goes back to my previous point. I think to myself that beliefs are something that you acquire, and it's up to you to shape your own journey. So for me, I don't like people say that it's impossible to be fit and work a serious job. Why? Do you know what I mean? I always say to myself that you can do it. It's almost as cliche, but you can do it as long as you put your mind to it, right? So for me, it's all about setting a routine to make sure everything's a lot more efficient and easy. So to give you an example, once focus on the work, I always made sure that I produced quality work and made sure that people were happy and I communicated with people. But then I did certain things like preparing my suit the night before to make sure that my transition into work was easy, preparing my meals. And again, I asked people that I saw in shape, how do you do it? And they told me some people had a meal prep company. Well, someone might say, okay, I don't have enough money. Fine, go and purchase the foods, research what works for you and prepare it the night before. Then, there's something I live by. I always make sure I have multiple gym memberships, a 24-hour gym and one local, so that if I have time, say if I'm working from home, for example, I can go to my home gym, but the